Hello and welcome back to another episode of SFE Stories. This week I'm so excited that we're joined by our first undergraduate student. I'd like to introduce you to our 2020/2021 student government president, Morgan Fritz, who's a proud member of Alpha Delta Pi sorority. Morgan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Awesome, Morgan. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing some of your story this afternoon with everybody. I'd love for you to start off and just give us a quick introduction to who is Morgan? Who are you?
Yeah, for sure. So hello, everyone. My name is Morgan Fritz. I am a junior in political science here at Iowa State. As Billy said, I'm a member of Alpha Delta Pi and also serve as the student government president this year. I'm originally from Lake Mills, Iowa, which is a small town in northern Iowa. So born and raised here, and yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Well, Morgan, you got to tell us, you're a junior now, first semester of junior year. You did this whole campaign, went this whole election process as a sophomore to be student government president. Why? Tell us about that. Tell us about that journey. I think typically people think of our student government president as a senior, right? But here you are running this sophomore campaign to take on your junior year as student government president. Tell us about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would say that I'm very big into how a team works. If a team is very effective, you're able to get things done a lot more efficiently, more effectively. And so I would say, the reason that I'm running right now is largely in part due to Jacob Schrader, who is my vice president. He's a senior this year, and we just really felt that we would work well together. And I really believe that we do. Because our strengths play off of each other. Very, very good. The internal things, getting stuff done behind the scenes, knowing who to contact. Whereas I, on the other hand, am my strengths are more on the external side of, interacting with people and, getting things done on that end. So to me, it was all about, the running mate and making sure that the team works together well, because I believe that that's, one of the biggest things I think in having effective leadership in student government.
Absolutely, and I would extend that to life. I think a lot of times people have this mentality of, I'm such a great leader, I can do all these things. That can be true, but I think you're right that a solid team can really help highlight individuals' leadership skills and abilities. And so I love that to hear that about you and Jacob, that you have this great partnership in leading our student government.
Exactly. Yeah. Leadership is never done alone. And so I think that's a very important consideration to make.
So Morgan, what got you into student government to begin with, right? Like, how did you start your journey there?
Yeah. So I coming into college, I knew that I wanted to be involved in student government. During high school, I had a few experiences that really kind of led me here. I was involved in 4-H, which allowed me to do the 4-H lobbying day on the Hill, at the Iowa Capitol, and I attended the National 4-H conference where I was able to, lobby for 4-H funding to our congressmen and women up in DC. So that was pretty exciting. I also served on the State of Iowa Youth Advisory Council for a 2-year term, my junior and senior year of high school. And so that's a council of 21 youth from across the state of Iowa that are able to form policy proposals and find legislators to sponsor them, write a bill for it, and attempt to get it signed into law. And so I actually one of the things that I worked on was changing Iowa's voting registration age from 18 to 17, so that if people are 18 by the general election, they can still vote in the primary election of state officials. And so that was one that we created a policy proposal for, gave it to a legislator, and it eventually ended up getting signed into law by Governor Branstad. So that was a pretty cool experience. And I also worked on helping with policy proposals for making financial literacy classes mandatory in all Iowa high schools. That one got passed after I was out of the council, but it was cool to still know that I helped work on it. And so, having those kind of formative experiences, I knew that I really wanted to get involved in, something government related, something policy related. And so student government was the natural pathway for that for me. And so my freshman year, I joined as a legislative ambassador, kind of doing that same lobbying at the Iowa Capitol. Sophomore year, I ran for the Collegiate Panhellenic Council Senator seat. And so I represented the sorority residency community there. And then now here I am. So, yeah.
So are we talking to a future Governor Fritz, a student Senator Fritz, a student U.S. President Fritz?
I don't
Do
know
you
about,
have do you have aspirations for politics? Is that
yeah, I don't know about president. I don't think I can let myself gray like that. They go gray pretty quickly. But
yeah.
I do think that I want to be involved in politics at some level. Whether that's leading youth programs similar to the ones that I was in growing up, or, running for a state legislature seat someday. I'm not sure what that looks like quite yet. Still got a bit of time to decide, but I really would like to be involved in politics in some aspect. To me, it's really about coming together with other people and solving, public issues. And that's something that I love doing.
I love that you started your journey into student government at Iowa State through the Collegiate Paleontologic Council Senator, which is a residency component. So I think a lot of people sometimes don't realize that when they see CPC Senator, they think it's, oh, the CPC community and you represent them. And it's different because the CPC president leads the Paleontologic community, but the CPC Senator in student government represents the people who live in sorority houses. And so I love that you got connected there. And so I'm curious about how maybe Alpha Delta Pi has helped you or support you or prepared you for your roles in student government.
Mm-hmm. I would say first, on the preparation side, I always felt incredibly encouraged and surrounded by inspiring women, to go and, dream big and do what I want to do. As a freshman, I have very distinct memories of, seniors at the same time who I looked up to them and was like, I want to, be like them someday. Like, they are so cool. They're doing great things. And I was just so like beyond impressed at who they were and what they were doing in college and how they were helping other people with, the activities they were involved in. And so on the preparation side, I had great role models to look up to, and I still do. And more on, the encouragement side is like, I remember during the campaign, I had people in my room at midnight, like taping Smarties to little handouts. And, we did the campaign launch here. And so we were able to, be here at 7 a.m. on, February 1st to start campaigning. So it's both on the preparation side and the encouragement side. I think that, the women of Alpha Delta Pi, they're always there to support. And, that's why I love, being in a sorority and being in Alpha Delta Pi.
So let's jump in a little bit more to your role as student government president and maybe platforms or positionality where you all sit. So this year has been a presidency like no other, right? Whether it's the crises around the country, around the value of people's lives, particularly Black people in this country, and how they may be experiencing trauma in different places, especially we saw with the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, to navigating the presidency during COVID and institutional policies that have had to change through that, among probably all the other things that you and Jacob are like, these are important issues. We should address this for our student body. So how do you manage all of those different interests? How do you advocate for the whole student body? How do you decide where to put your time, effort, and energy? And what would you say is most important to your administration right now? And I know there's like 12 questions in there, so feel free to start wherever you think is appropriate and take it where it goes.
Yes. So I guess I will start out with COVID. That's kind of how our term began. We won the presidency on March 3rd and 4th. We were sworn in on March 26th. In between then, we were sent home, not to return again in the spring. So, yeah. And so, we came back March 26th and did our inauguration. Usually is a really cool event out at the Alumni Center. We did that with 4 people there, socially distanced in front of the MU fountain. So, still memorable in that sense. So I would say that something I think that always, comes up during the year is, we come in with platform points and things that we want to accomplish. And, those are things to work on, and those are great and we're working towards them. But, what also comes up is, those spontaneous things that just arise by natural human events. And that this year is, COVID-19, and a lot of light has been brought to, racial disparities in our country. And so I think dealing with those things first is paramount, and making sure that the current situation is handled. All summer long, I worked on the academic continuity work group, which was basically the group that decided how classes were going to look at Iowa State this fall. And so, I was in the conversation for a lot of the decisions being made regarding, are we going to have in-person classes? Are we going to be all online? Are we going to have hybrid? How are the classrooms physically going to be set up? What considerations need to be taken for advising and for student success in academics and tutoring and all that stuff. And so that was kind of a large project for the summer, and I was glad to be a part of that team. And so, that's kind of how my part in helping handle COVID there. And then I think, on the kind of the racial and social justice side, we did host a social justice forum this summer virtually with President Winterstein, Dean Evans, Reg Stewart from Diversity and Inclusion, and then, myself and Jacob, and the Black Student Alliance president, India Robinson. And so that, I think, was a very, productive starting point and productive conversation. Reg Stewart mentioned that was the first time during his time working at Iowa State that he has been able to exclusively talk about, being Black and the Black experience. It's something that often gets, piled together with other areas of diversity and inclusion. But it's important, to recognize that oftentimes there are different issues for, the different parts of, social justice that we talk about. And so I think that was a really good starting point there. As far as, our platform goes that we are working on, outside that, we're focusing on affordability, campus climate, and sustainability. Within affordability, I think the biggest thing we're working on are a pilot program for income share agreements. Those are a new way to pay for college education that's not the typical grant or student loan. Instead, it's where a student would receive a portion of funding for their education, and then in return, upon graduation, they would pay a specified percentage of their income for a specified number of years. And for a lot of students, that option ends up being a lot more affordable than the market for private loans. And so, we just want to bring another tool to the affordability toolbox here at Iowa State to make sure that students are able to access education. To me, I love Iowa State. I often say the best decision I ever made in my life was choosing to come to Iowa State. Yeah. And I love the programs and the education and the opportunities that are offered here. But if students don't have access to them, then nothing that we do here matters. And so it's all about me, for me, creating that access to education, to this opportunity that people have at Iowa State.
I love that. I love that the team is thinking about different options, right? It's not necessarily like a better option for everybody. It certainly could be, but it's a different option. And I personally get excited when leaders find alternative solutions, right? And just like, here's another way you can do this, right? There's another way you could finance your education to come to school and to be a part of this amazing experience. I'm curious, maybe Morgan, if there's a project maybe that you're working on that maybe people don't know about, like that you want to shed more light on. Like this is something cool. It's maybe a passion project that you have as student government president that maybe isn't getting the exposure or the awareness around it that you would like it to. And I just want to give you an opportunity to maybe talk from the heart about something you really want to see happen or evolve in our community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say, I am very passionate about college affordability, as I just kind of mentioned. And another smaller component of that, that, is going on at Iowa State, and there is work being done, but it'd be great if it could, larger, more prevalent, is that of open educational resources. And those resources that are free of cost or access barriers. And so those can be implemented in classrooms. So professors and faculty can choose to use entirely open resources. Students wouldn't have to buy textbooks that way. And so that's something that last year I worked on a project of, honoring the 19 faculty at Iowa State that had registered that they were using them. In the meantime, now 31 faculty are using those. So, even in a year's time, it was an additional 12 people that started using them. So I think that's awesome. And there's a lot of resources where the library can help faculty and staff, build those resources, find suitable ones for their classroom. And so that one to me, I'm very passionate about, just because anything to lower the cost of education and lower those barriers is very important to me.
Yeah, I love that. I actually didn't even know that was I knew of it. I just didn't know that that was a growing community of faculty here at Iowa State. So that's
Yeah,
really cool.
very exciting.
So as we think about all those things that you just talked about, all the different topics and places where you talked about student governments actively working, trying to make a difference, trying to make change, trying to support the student experience at Iowa State, how can sororities and fraternities support those endeavors? How can they get behind those causes? What can they do to help create the change that we need?
Mhm. I would say sororities and fraternities can play a huge part in this, just because it's groups of very passionate individuals. We there's evidence of that from Greek Week and homecoming and fundraising and all that. We know that sorority and fraternity men and women are very engaged and they care about the community, and so that's very clear to see. And so, one, it could be getting involved in student government. Two, it could be coming to student government, speaking about issues that they see arise, that they're passionate about, that they'd like people to help work on, that they'd like to help work on themselves. And additionally, I think creating change within each chapter internally is a good thing too. Something that I worked on last year was I wanted Alpha Delta Pi, our housing chapter, to be more sustainable. And so I went to our housing board and I said, hey, here is a program that the city of Ames is doing. It's called the Ames Sun Smart Solar Program. It's where you basically buy into this community solar farm, and in return, you're given a rebate off your electricity bill for the next 20 years. You money back that you put into it, but it helps the solar farm be built. So a portion of your electricity is then sustainable. And so I think that was a very tangible way to become more sustainable within the chapter facility. And so that's something that I took my housing corporation, and they bought into that program this past year. So it's one of those things about seeing needs where they arise and being the one to step up and do it. And I think that sorority and fraternity men and women are very, very capable of doing those things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from the housing community for sororities and fraternities, I think there's a lot of work that can be done around sustainability. And we've got a great resource on campus with the Sustainability Office and Mayor Rankin and her staff. And even Greeks Go Green is a relatively, I'll call it a new auxiliary group at Iowa State. We had it in our community for a long time. It disappeared for a couple of years, and it's been kind of brought back to life in the last year. And there's a lot of students that are actually having conversations around recycling programs in the sorority and fraternity housing community, as well as composting. I actually had the opportunity to visit the University of Indiana a couple summers ago, and almost all of their sorority and fraternity houses have compost at the chapter facility. And even after meal service, there's a regular process, and it's a part of the culture about these things are compostable. We need to put it there, and here's the things that are not and need to go into the trash. And I had a meal coincidentally at the Alpha Delta Pi house there, and after the chef had made lunch for 100 people and everybody had eaten, it was less than one trash bag of trash for 100 people. And I just thought that was such a cool thing and a great opportunity to look at the carbon footprint that we're creating. Because at home, I'll make dinner for myself and I'll go through a whole trash bag sometimes, and so it gave me a good opportunity to reflect on that and say, I probably shouldn't be producing that much trash. I need to relook at how I'm doing this and how I'm preparing a meal so that I'm not having that much waste. And, I've been able to make some improvements in my own life, but I think there's a lot of students right now that are really committed to sustainability, particularly in the housing community for sororities and fraternities. I think there's a way they can think about that, from energy audits to recycling programs to composting as well.
100%.
So,
yeah, that's what we're here.
Morgan, I don't want to put you on the spot about whether you're going to run for re-election and take a second term as student body president or not, right? So that's not the question I'm asking you, and I don't want to dismiss that if that's what you want to do, that I'm asking for somebody to take your job. I'm curious. My real question is, what do you think should be a priority for the next student government president? So this time of year, the reason why I asked that question is this time of year is transitions for a lot of our sorority and fraternity leadership. So whether it's council officers or chapter officers or some of our auxiliary groups, a lot of our groups are changing over officers right now. And this is a lot of the things that they're thinking about is, how do I transition this role and how do I prepare somebody to take on this role after me? And so based on the work that you've been able to do, what would you hope that the next student government president would take on in their role and their responsibilities.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I guess I will answer your first question. I think that this opportunity, being student body president, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And so I wouldn't want to take that, opportunity away from anyone else. I've enjoyed this role so much so far. And I believe I will continue to enjoy it for the remainder of my term. But it's really one of those things that I think it's good to have a fresh set of eyes in there, new ideas, and very passionate about Iowa State. There's a lot of people on this campus that are, and so I wouldn't, it's a once in a lifetime thing, and so I won't be running for re-election, but I will be staying involved on campus as much as I can, and I'll be starting a concurrent master's program in public policy next year, so that should be something fun on the side as well. But as far as issues that I hope the next person works on, I would love for them to continue focusing on affordability. The income share program that I was talking about, we're beginning discussions right now with, the Office of Financial Aid and other institutions that have these programs and how that could potentially be set up at Iowa State. But that's something that, it definitely needs more follow-up. It needs to be continued in years to come. Something more, less, that's a little more ambiguous, I would say, is I would really like them to focus on the culture of Iowa State. So right now I'm, with COVID-19 and everything that's going on, it has changed, I think, the culture a little bit. Students aren't going to club meetings because they're not really in person. There's not really the events that are happening on campus that are very much, I think, a hallmark of Iowa State. With our 900 plus student orgs, I think something that we are very well known for is leadership and involvement and, on campus. And I just think that needs to be really focused on in the years to come of, getting people involved that maybe didn't get involved this year because there weren't as many opportunities to. So just making sure that there are a lot of events on campus and a lot of fun things to do and interact with people. I've kind of said that, after this is all over, I've learned that I will never turn down the chance for a social interaction ever again. I will be saying yes to every single thing anyone else has to do from now on. So that's something I would also think would be good to focus on.
Yeah, I think it's a great point in just thinking about how do we help other people be connected. And I was thinking about this even this weekend as I was talking to some friends is, a lot of it right now, we're thinking about our own isolation or our own experience being virtual and how we're connecting and not connecting. And one thing I was just thinking about is maybe all the people that don't have a support system as strong as a sorority and fraternity and don't have people to check in on them, and how can those of us that have the privilege of these social organizations to help us stay connected, how can we help reach out to others who maybe don't have those same resources or same connections to make sure that everybody has somebody to connect with right now when so many things are virtual. And I think I'm seeing some more things in person in much smaller groups, which is cool, as people are still following all the safety guidelines. It's important to keep doing that. It's what allows us to be here. But I just think about how can we help reach out to more people who maybe aren't as well connected to make sure that they have a positive experience. Because I think you're right. There's something magical about Iowa State. When I moved here 8 years ago, sometimes I feel like Iowa State is in a bubble and, we're sheltered from everything else that happens in the world. And sometimes I think that has kept us behind quite a few years. But I think it also allows us to have a magical experience once you step on campus for your adventure.
100%. I think that I like to say that, I chose Iowa State for the opportunities of, a research institution and, a large school of 34,000 people. That's why I chose it. But why I stay is the community. I have, it's Iowa Nice. I have great friends here, great clubs, great organizations, awesome professors and faculty. And, so I think that's, one of the most important things about Iowa State is the community. So that's something I think that I want to focus on and make sure that people are staying connected to that and, staying involved.
Well, Morgan, I can't believe it. It's almost time for us to end our interview. So thank you for all of your insight. I don't want to skip our final few questions. I want to get to those, but I have to say, if I wasn't a fan of Morgan Fritz before, I definitely am now. I've just appreciated your leadership and your candidness and your ability to talk about how you're leading student government. I think that's really important in a leader, is to be open and transparent and to talk about the issues. And I think you do all those things amazingly well. So thank you for jumping on. Thank you for sharing that story with us today. All right, our final 3 questions for you, because everybody has to get these, and we've got to know your answers. So the first question for you, Morgan, is I'm looking for something from ADPi, whether it's a line from a creed, a song, a poem, something ADPi that you think about often, and it helps kind of guide who you are and how you live your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would say, it's kind of our tagline, be the first. And so to me, that's not, I think a common misconception about that can be that it's about, competitive, being competitive and coming in first in a race or something like that. But how I really look at it is that it's, it's about being the one to step up and do something. To me, that's what I think leadership is about, is, finding an issue, being the one to step up and, do something about it, because we're all capable of that. You just have to be the one that does it. And so that's really what that is about to me, whether that's, being the first to start a conversation with someone and make sure that someone feels included while, sitting down at a table, or, even finding a massive issue on campus and being the first one to address it. It's really just about, stepping up and being a leader to me.
Awesome. I love that. Because I think a lot of people do kind of take it as like, oh, they're just going to win the race, but there's such a deeper meaning to that. And I'm glad that you were able to explain that to us. Mm-hmm. Kind of a different direction. And maybe it's a fun question. Maybe it's a nerdy question. We'll see where you decide to go with it. But I'm curious about 2 things that either you're reading or you're watching. Maybe it's a podcast you're listening to. But 2 things that maybe you're reading or watching.
Yeah. So I guess the answer is fun for me, probably nerdy for most. But so one thing that I'm reading currently right now, it's called Team of Rivals. It's by Doris Kearns Goodwin, and it's about Abraham Lincoln's presidency. And so it's a very interesting insight into how he was able to formulate his cabinet. So he basically took the people that he ran against in the primary, a lot of whom he didn't agree with, and who were actively running against him in the race for presidency, and he put them on his cabinet. So to me, I think that that's a very good analogy for how politics should be. That's my major. I have to bring that in. But politics is not about, and being a leader is not about being decisive to me. Like I said, I really do think it's about the team. I don't think it's about just me standing at the front of the room saying this is how it's going to be. Like when I run my cabinet meetings, it's, what do you guys think on this issue? And we allow everyone to speak and have part in the conversation. And then, it helps us make decisions from there. So it really is about bringing in a lot of different voices, many times ones who, I have a differing opinion from. But that's what politics is all about. It's about blending and balancing those differing viewpoints and opinions and making sure that everyone is, well served from that. So I think that one is just kind of, a good historical book, but also it provides some insight into, good politics and, how good government should be run. So that's one. And another one that I am kind of re-going through is called The Dance of Legislation. And so it's basically about a staffer in the Senate. It's kind of a biography about his time there and how he was able to help pass a bill in Congress. And so it's a very cool thing to hear about, and it's something that I'm very interested in. Maybe doing that someday on Capitol Hill. Working for a congressman or woman. So we'll see how that goes. And I guess one final thing that I really really do like, I have to include this, is it's an article that I read very often. It's called A Politician's Art by Henry Fairley, and so that one is about what are the skills that it takes to be a good politician, and those are flexibility, imperturbability, the ability to make and remake publics, respect for adversaries, joy in the game, things like that. And so it's all about, being flexible, making sure that you're able to, roll with the punches and, take whatever comes up with you. Imperturbability is really about ensuring that, things do not always go your way. There are projects that don't work out. There are things that don't see the light of day, but that's life, and you have to move on and move forward from that. the ability to form teams and form groups and make sure that things are working out, and respecting people that don't agree with you at the end of the day, because you're all working towards the same goal but just have different ways of coming at it. So and then I guess finally, joy in the game is really about, if you truly really love something and you're passionate about it, that's what drives you. And I'd say, kind of ending on that note, is that's what drives me to be in student government and be at Iowa State. Is I am passionate about this campus. I love Iowa State, and what drives me to do the work that I do is because I want to make sure that everyone has a good experience here and make sure that everyone loves Iowa State just as much as I do. So
I love that, Morgan, and I think you're right. Some people might find it nerdy, but as a political science major myself, no, I love that. I love reading about I like reading about politicians of our past, to try to understand their perspective of why they did that. I mean, I think sometimes we idolize people, but to me, it's not about idolizing them. It's more about understanding like what was their strategy for certain things, and then also maybe looking at some of those flaws and dissecting those and thinking about that. And then just to comment on your last comment about the article, I really appreciate people that ground themselves in some type of work, whatever that looks like. And so it sounds like you do that with that article, as you mentioned, that you constantly refer back to it and look back at it and read it over and over and over again. I love that helps you develop your philosophy. And I'm sure if anybody's curious about how you lead your administration or what student government looks like under this current year, they could probably read that article and get a very clear insight into your leadership approach to that. So I love that, and thank you for sharing that with us. The last question is probably the hardest question, but also probably the easiest question for many people. And so it just kind of depends on where you're at today. And Morgan, I'm just curious about what brings you joy.
I would really say that it's the people in my life, and I'd say it's the little things too, of just it's my friends and my family, and how I'm able to support them and they support me, and kind of the unconditional love that comes with having close friends and family, is something that I think brings me joy. And on the side of how it's the little things of it's coming home and seeing my roommates and just chatting with them. Is I wouldn't say that it's very hard for me to pin down like some one large event that brings me joy, but I think it's just kind of a culmination of the small moments that really add up and just make me happy. And so I would say that it's really about people, and on the side of leadership, that's what drives me to do what I do. Is I care about the people that I'm serving, and so I'd say that work can bring me joy in that sense, that I care about the people that it's impacting. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Morgan, so much for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your story, telling us all about your student government leadership, the role of ADPI, and how it's impacted you as well, all the way down to telling us that people bring you joy, in spending time with them, and in just having that quality time matters. So I really appreciate it. I'll give you one last opportunity for any final thoughts that you want to say. You can stand on the soapbox or just send a message, whatever works for you.
Go vote. That's my soapbox for the day.
There we go. Yes. Please vote. 13 days from when we're recording this. We'll see how many days it is from the time the episode airs. But thank you, Morgan. Stay safe, and everybody go vote.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Bye.